So I work for the FTTH Council Europe, which is an industry organization that is a non-profit, and we are really working in the whole of Europe. And our mission is to promote fiber to the home networks, because we have a vision of a sustainable future for our European continent powered by fiber to the home. And the reason I am here today is twofold. The first one is because this is a great gathering in Poland of operators, and I know that this forum here has been very technical. My presentation is very different from the other ones, and it's also in English, but I will present some of the facts and findings that the FTTH Council has gathered in the last years. Basically, the role of my organization is to help you. It's to help all the broadband stakeholders in Europe as a whole, but also in individual countries, to help them understand the difference between the different networks, and especially people interested in building fiber to the home networks, of course. And in order to do that, we have a wide range of activities, but mostly we gather information that we make available. So we have a website which you see at the bottom of the slides, and you can find there a lot of information on the financing of networks, on the markets, on the services. We have case studies, we have plenty of things that are made available to you. The reason being, so there's just one thing, is that, okay, but that's fine. Normally I have masked slides, and so I see that they appear now, but it's fine. I will just pass them quickly. So we believe that, and I think in this room you should be well aware that it is now widely acknowledged throughout Europe and throughout the world that fiber to the home is the only future-proof solution. And amongst all our activities, one of the second big reason that I am speaking here today is that we organize every year the largest FTTH-focused event in the world, and we move from country to country. So we just finished one in Stockholm, Sweden, in February, so last month. And the next one, we are coming here to Warsaw. We will be in Expo 21. And so we hope that you can make some time and save the date and come there. It is a very large event with more than 3,000 participants from all over Europe. But of course, every year, because we move from country to country, we have a very local flavor with a lot of activities in the conference, in the expo, in the workshops that are dedicated to the country where we are organizing the event. But this is just the introduction about the FTTH Council and why I am here today. The rest of my presentation is firstly on the FTTH markets in the world, and more specifically in Europe and in Poland. And also the second part of my presentation will cover why fiber to the home, especially from an operator's perspective. Actually, you see a lot of the sponsors of the PLNOG event probably are members of the Fiber to the Home Council Europe, because our members are usually equipment manufacturers or people who have something to do with contributing to building fiber to the home networks in Europe. So let's have a look at the world picture. You see on this map the total. So it's really absolute figures, total numbers of subscribers in the world. So Asia Pacific is leading by far with 93 million subscribers, which is really a huge number and still rising really fast, followed by North America with 12.4 million. And these are the CIS countries, mostly Russia and the Ukraine. So Europe only amounts to 9.5 million subscribers, but if you combine the CIS countries with Europe, then we are reaching more than 20 million subscribers. And really, and that is another reason why we are organizing the FTTH conference in Warsaw next year, is that the growth of fiber to the home networks really is coming from the eastern side of Europe now, the CIS countries, but also some other countries, and I will get back to this later. In the rest of the world, in South America, the FTTH is really only just starting now. So basically, we only have 1.5 million subscribers, and it is the same situation in the Middle East and North Africa, where we only have 1.3 million subscribers. But I'm pretty sure if we meet again in a year's time, that these numbers will have grown very, very quickly, because these are regions that are developing their networks in a significant way. These are absolute figures. How about the percentage of fiber to the home out of the other technologies in a given country? So these figures here are made available because the Fiber to the Home Council Europe works with other FTTH councils in the world, and we have the same definitions of fiber to the home and fiber to the building. We have the definitions on our website if you want to see the technical details, but basically we count anything as long as the fiber comes all the way at least into the basement of a multi-dwelling building. So ideally all the way to the end user, but if not, it has to be at least inside of the building, in the basement. So we are not counting anything that is where the fiber is far away from the end user, because that is in the last mile that the bottlenecks happen. So in relative terms, you have on this graph, I know it's very small, but it's getting hard to get them all to fit into one slide. You have 33 countries in the world where there is more than 1% of the households that are connected as subscribers to fiber to the home or fiber to the building. So, So here you have the name of the country. Here you have the penetration rate. I'm sorry, I tried to put as much space for the countries. So it's basically 5. So this is 5, 10, 15, 20. The leader in the world is United Arab Emirates with more than 85% penetration. We're talking subscribers, not homes passed. So it means 85% of the population actually are using fiber access networks. And then we have really, it really matches. So in absolute figures and relative numbers, all the Southeast Asian countries are here. We have South Korea, Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, Taiwan in the top 6, with penetration rates between 40, Taiwan is like 39, and 75. So these are really high penetration rates. And actually, in the Middle East, you also have Saudi Arabia, and there is another one somewhere. So they are really building fast, and when they build, they just build the entire country. So it goes really quickly in terms of penetration rates. Europe's number 1 is actually Lithuania. I was telling you that the Eastern European countries were really strong. So Lithuania, with 33, almost 34% penetration, is the first of the European countries, and I will now take you to save your eyes. This is the same thing, but just with European countries. There are 23 European countries that have more than 1% penetration. And we, apart from Lithuania, that is number 1, the Nordic countries, Scandinavia, they have been the historic leaders of fiber to the home networks. They started deploying in Sweden, for example, already 20 years ago. So it is interesting because they have high penetrations, but they used to be all at the top, and you see now, Sweden is here, Norway, Denmark, Finland down here. You see that there are many other countries that are really, getting higher in this, and a lot of them are from the eastern side of Europe. You have Latvia, Russia, Bulgaria, Slovakia, Slovenia, Estonia. About half of the 23 countries here are from Eastern Europe, and I will get back to Poland in a while. As you can see, Poland is not on this graph, because Poland does not, has not reached the 1% penetration of the population. And the European Union as a whole reaches less, it's 3.6, I think. It's less than 4% penetration, which is really low on average. And you can see that the big countries like France, Italy, Spain, they are at the bottom. And apart from Poland, you see also that there are some key missing countries on this graph. Germany and the UK are not there because the operators, and it is the same case in Poland, have mostly made the choice of other technologies for their next generation access networks, namely in the fixed networks, often VDSL or cable, which is of course not a future-proof solution, but you know, will make do for the time being. So it is really a selection of the operators to have done that. This is the situation in Poland. All of these figures, by the way, are updated once a year at the end of the year. So we announced them at the FTTH conference in February. So these figures really were just announced. You're one of the first people in the world to hear about them. And we have a total number of subscribers which is really low for such a big country as Poland. And the number of homes passed, which is, yeah, it is a start, but really not much. So as I said before, the total penetration rate is less than 1%. It's just 0.51%. And the take-up rate, which is the number of subscribers divided by the number of homes passed, is less than 16%, which also is a very low standard by European standard. Even in Europe, which is not great in take-up rates, you will see, I will come back to this in a minute, you will see that the take-up rates are very high. Another detail regarding Poland is that in terms of technology, we have so far 25% FTTH and 75% FTTB, which is more or less the trend in Europe. We have more fiber to the building, of course, than fiber to the home, because in multi-dwelling buildings, often the operators just get into the building and use either coax, cable, or you know, copper networks or other technologies to reach the end user afterwards. So I was saying that I would compare to Europe. Now, we look at Europe in three ways. We look at EU 39, which is the greater Europe, including the EU, the non-EU countries, and going all the way to, you know, including Russia and the Ukraine. In total, if we include everybody, then we have 20 million subscribers. That's what I was telling you on the other map. And out of almost 80 million homes passed, which is a take-up rate of nearly 26%. And what is interesting is that the growth rate of homes passed is 37%, whereas the growth rate of subscribers is 43%. And this is a good sign for operators because it means that, you know, there are that it means basically that the take-up rate will increase, which of course for the operators is finally revenue coming on the fiber networks. So this is for EU 39. If we now look at EU 35, which is the same without the CIS countries, we drop by 10 million. And we drop by more than 10 million homes passed here. We have 42 over 10, more or less, and the take-up rate is lower, 23%. And here, the good news is still good news because we have 38% growth rate for subscribers over 31 for homes passed. And if finally we look really at the European Union, so the EU, strictly speaking, 28 countries that belong to the European Union, we have an even, we have an even lower number with less than 8 million subscribers, 35 million homes passed, and a take rate of less than 23%. Still, the growth rates are positive in, you know, it's higher for subscribers than homes passed. Then I'm sorry, I'm going to pass over quite a lot of slides because I had masked them, but from Mac to PC, apparently they have appeared again, so I will try to remember the ones I wanted to present here. But basically, all the slides will be made available. I will not go over all these detailed market slides. I will be available for questions, and they will be made available afterwards. But there are some things I wanted to go through with you. The first one is the FTTB versus FTTH ratios. In the EU 39, it is 66% FTTB versus 34% FTTH, so it's more or less in line with the ratio here in Poland also. In the EU 28, however, we have a lot more fiber to the home, because it's the region where fiber to the home subscribers are, sorry, homes passed. This is a segmentation of homes passed, so fiber to the home homes passed are higher than the other ones. And you see here on the map where you have mainly FTTH and mainly FTTB. Another thing I wanted to show you is the take-up rates. This is just to show you that the take-up rate always takes a bit of time in the beginning, but with as the years go by, the growth becomes exponential, because in the beginning, of course, an operator deploys homes, and once the marketing follows, which sometimes takes a few years depending how good the marketing is done, then the consumers will switch, but it always, there's a lag of a couple of years. And so in the countries, you see here the take-up rates can be quite high. In Sweden, for example, we have take-up rates much higher than the European average. So the European average, of course, it's hard to just work with averages, and you really have to look at the individual situation. In Russia, it's already almost 36%. Lithuania, 33%, and Hungary, Slovenia. I mean, you see there are quite a lot of countries where the take-up rate is high. Okay, I will not go over here. Here we see that in spite of the economic downturn, fiber to the home has continued to grow. This is 2007, and since 2007, I mean, we've had an economic crisis, but you see that the growth really continues. In blue, it's the past, and in orange, the future. And we are expecting this growth to continue in the coming years. The reason being that there are many services and that are FTTH enabled, FTTH enhanced also, and this is really dragging the market forward for fiber to the home. And the reason we're looking at this is because we work with Heavy Reading, the analysts, and they say that a country reaches the beginning of their fiber maturity when they have reached 20% of penetration, so penetration of homes as subscribers. And you see here the year when, I mean, there are just a few examples here, and Poland is not here because anyway, on current trends, it's impossible to see when Poland would reach fiber maturity, since there are no specific plans to deploy fiber to the home. Not significantly anyhow. But in the countries that have announced some plans, we are able to foresee on the current trends what year they will reach fiber maturity. So we are now in 2013. So you see that Sweden, for example, has already reached fiber maturity in 2012. Japan and Korea in 2007 already, and Taiwan in 2009. And you see, for example, Denmark, will only reach fiber maturity in 2016, and some countries here, like Germany, Italy, and the UK, they are expected to reach fiber maturity only well after the year 2022. Europe, as a whole, the European Union, is expected to reach fiber maturity in 2022, which is 2 years later than the digital agenda target here. So that's one fact. And the reason this is important is that fiber maturity, the 20% threshold, imagine you're a service developer and you provide, I don't know, e-health services or video conferencing services or something, and you are trying to sell to end users in a country that do not have a proper broadband connection. then this would be a big issue because you do not really have a market. And it means that the countries who reach a fiber maturity earlier than others are likely to have an industry on the services side which is also more developed. And we see this already today in Sweden, for example, where there are a lot of very powerful services in terms of e-health, e-care, e-education. The gaming industry, Sweden is very strong in computer gaming. The film industry also, you have a lot of editors and people who work in Sweden from their offices with Hollywood. So this has an impact overall on the economy. I mean, if you think of Skype, for example, Spotify, everybody knows about these creations. I mean, they were initiated in Sweden, and that is, as far as we're concerned, not by chance that it happened. So I know that there are some wrong ideas. There are some false, things that people think about with fiber to the home, and I will not take you through everything in details, but basically, few things like fiber, doesn't bring anything. You can do the same with any other technology. There's no demand. It's too expensive. Governments have an economic crisis to take care about, and the summary of all this is, yeah, fiber to the home is really nice, but we don't need it now. It's something for the future. I think you're all in here well placed to know that fiber to the home is not only about speed, so I will not get to the details on this, but basically there is no other technology that can do what fiber to the home can do. It is a real enabler, and we know there is a cost to deploying fiber to the home networks. Actually, we have worked with some analysts, and we have put a figure on this cost. The cost to deploy fiber to the home networks in the European Union would be approximately 202 billion euros. But if you look at what the operators are spending anyhow in the upgrading of existing copper networks, then you need to compare this being fiber to the home being a future-proof investment, which has to be looked at in the long run, compared to some shorter-term solutions which do not have the same impact. But it is true that operators today tend to have short-term business cases, which is a pity, because I've been in the telecoms business for a long time, and I remember not so far away we did work with much longer-term business cases. What's very interesting is that it is a fact, and we know this because we organize a lot of workshops with investors. Investors are interested in fiber to the home networks. The only thing is often the projects are too small and do not do not reach the attention of the investors. So if you have a local or like a municipal project or a regional project, to reach the attention of the investors, you would need to maybe gather forces with some of your neighboring municipalities. For an operator, it is very clear that there is a business case, but there again, there are several layers that have to be looked at, and depending on the layer, you're working more or less, short term or long term. What we have shown, and we have on our website many case studies that I would invite you to have a look at from operators of many different countries, small, big, competitors, incumbents, municipal, regional. What's interesting is that once a business case is well put together, there is a business case, and the reason behind this is that even though there is a cost of deployment, you are reducing the churn, you are reducing the OPEX, and you are, more importantly, increasing your revenue because of all the services that I was talking about earlier, which means that once the network has reached a significant number of customers, you are starting to sell some added value services, and the customers are not willing to pay for the network, but they are willing to pay for the services, usually. we are not saying that the operators have to do it all on their own. Of course, the public authorities have a role to play on all levels, actually, national, regional, and local. And I hear that there may be some, I mean, of course, there are some plans throughout Europe on the broadband deployment, and I am hoping that Poland, on a government level, will take some decisions for future-proofing the broadband networks, especially when public money is involved. We believe that public money should be invested in future-proof technology because there is a huge positive impact, a huge socio-economic impact of fiber to the home, which can help solve some of the issues that we are facing in terms of unemployment, the aging population that is costing a lot of money, you know, lack of education in many places. And it is a fact that fiber to the home contributes to economic growth. We are not saying it. This lady from the European Commission is. The OECD is also saying this, which is why we believe that there is a place for you know, government investment. Rolling out fiber to the home creates jobs, and it also increases the training level in a given country. And this is a competitive advantage because we are seeing a lack of resources. In countries that are deploying fiber to the home really fast, they usually are lacking resources if they had not prepared this before in the training process. They are lacking engineers, they are lacking some specifically skilled people. And so in the countries that have developed the networks first, the companies that have trained their people, they can export that to, you know, other European countries, for instance. And of course, for governments, reduced travel, reduced transport of goods and people, this has a good impact on the environment, not to talk about smart home and smart city services. Bridging the digital divide between the rural and the urban areas is also something that is key for governments in Europe. And the aging population I was talking about earlier, and I can tell you it is really true that there are some really home monitoring systems that are really key and have been developed in Sweden, for instance, already now. So these are really all macroeconomic things, but what about demand? What about the end user? Well, it is a fact that there is demand, and there are a lot of statistics, and they all show growth of the bandwidth demand, and not just downloading, but also uploading. We believe that the question is taken the wrong way around. So we should just not think about what are people asking for, because as Henry Ford was saying, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. Take up takes time. This is the take-up rate, and this is the years of operation. We have looked at a certain number of operators, and you see that, of course, it takes time, but that's what I was saying earlier. Once it takes off, it really has really high growth. And this is, I mean, there should have been a play here, but basically, this is saying if, you know, the average speed of cars in the States, I think, is like 39 kilometers per hour. This is the average speed that cars are rolling in the streets. So, I mean, cars, of course, you can buy that go all like 150 or something. So it's not that you need to have 150 as your average speed when you're driving, but you need it sometimes. And it is exactly the same thing with broadband networks. And consumers don't understand the limitations until they actually experience the difference. I can tell you, I am a happy fiber to the home user, and I now get very annoyed when I travel anywhere because I find very frustrated with the speeds of downloading and uploading. So the question really isn't, do we need it? The question is, are we not going to miss something by not doing it now? Because fiber brings a real competitive advantage to the public, but also the private players. And the cost of not doing it is actually higher than the cost of doing it if you wait for too long. And it is also a fact that when people get the bandwidth, they use it in different ways. So we are not just talking about increasing the speed, we are talking about an entirely different world where people do things completely differently. I will just end, before I show you a short clip in Polish, I will just end with this message, the future is now. I hope you experience the power of fiber, and may the PLNOG be with you. Thank you.
Światłowód do mieszkania. Od czego zacząć? Gubisz się w gąszczu skrótów i nazw technologii? ADSL, VDSL, XDSL, kabel, światłowód szerokopasmowy, przepustowość, FTTC, FTTB, FTTH. Dostęp nowej generacji. Stój! To naprawdę bardzo proste. Przecież Tobie zależy na szybkim internecie do wysyłania i ściągania piosenek i filmów, tanim dzwonieniu i rozmowach wideo z przyjaciółmi i rodziną gdziekolwiek są, pracy z domu tak łatwej jak z biura, oglądaniu programów TV, HD lub klipów wideo na żądanie, graniu online z przyjaciółmi, szybkim kopiowaniu danych online i dzieleniu się nimi z przyjaciółmi i rodziną itd. To fakt, że spośród wszystkich technologii i rozwiązań światłowód do mieszkania FTTH oferuje najszybszy i najbardziej niezawodny dostęp do internetu. Więc co z innymi rozwiązaniami? Połączenia mobilne są o wiele wolniejsze od FTTH, zwłaszcza jeśli kilku użytkowników korzysta z jednego połączenia naraz. Również połączenia satelitarne są dużo wolniejsze od FTTH. Generują opóźnienie w rozmowach telefonicznych i innych usługach interaktywnych. Technologie kablowe jak ADSL używają metalowych przewodów 100 razy wolniejszych niż światłowód do połączenia klienta z siecią miejską. Tymczasem ściągnięcie filmu w HD zajmuje godzinę, jeśli masz szczęście i ktoś z rodziny nie używa internetu w tym samym czasie. Może dzieciaki już na to narzekały? Ze światłowodem do mieszkania połączysz się ultraszybkim światłowodem bezpośrednio z domu, biura czy budynku. Jak? Dzięki cienkim jak włos elastycznym szklanym włóknom, które przewodzą światło. Słyszałeś o prędkości światła? O tym właśnie mówimy. Wyobraź to sobie. Ze światłowodem do mieszkania ściągniesz film w kilka minut, nawet jeśli dzieciaki prowadzą rozmowę wideo z babcią. I to się szybko nie zmieni, bo FTTH to technologia przyszłościowa o praktycznie nieograniczonym potencjale. W Europie już kilka milionów domów korzysta z zalet światłowodu do mieszkania. Kiedy Ty się przyłączysz?
Just one precision. Clearly, this is not for your intention, because I guess you already know about all this. But I wanted to show you because this is free of rights, so it's on our website, and I will of course let the event organizers here. If you want to use it, you're free to use it in social networks or whatever. I don't know if you have any questions.
Dobrze, jeżeli